Hey everyone, Tony D with Screenwriter's Tip, and I haven't done one of these in a while, but here's today's tip. Um, this is about working as a freelancer screenwriter, and when you have a day job and when you don't, and the difference. So when there are advantages and disadvantages to both. So when you're working full time in another job and doing the screenwriting, a lot of times you fall into this mode of, well, life sucks. I just want to be home writing my screenplays and doing all sorts of creative things and having fun. And I understand that feeling. I had that feeling in the past, and I get it. But the truth is, that isn't always the green pasture you think it is. The grass is always greener in a lot of respects. There are positives to having a full-time job and doing stuff more on the side. The main positive is you have an income stream, so you are free to work on any project you want on the outside. You don't have to work for money. You can actually pursue creative interest pretty freely. Even though you may not have the time, you may have to blow off a lot of weekends and nights working on your dream, but that's par for the course if you're into this. If you want to write a screenplay and you're dedicated, you're going to spend time doing it. And it feels like a bit of a grind, especially if you're younger. When I was younger, it felt worse because it was like, man, all my friends go out and they do cool stuff, and I'm always torn between like going out with my friends and staying home to write stuff. And believe me, I totally get that. But if you want to do it, you got to make the time. For me, I would sort of try to split it, and sometimes I would stay home. I'm not like a super social guy. I wasn't like a drinker or anything, but I would go to things when I was younger. I would always try to work it into work or creativity work. So, a lot of my social stuff for a few years was related to improv. So I was in the improv scene in Philly for a long time, and I would hang out with other improvers, and there'd be parties and social events, and that would be fun. And I felt like that was at least, staying in the mix of something. It wasn't like a total party situation, if you know what I'm saying. Like I felt like I was at least sort of networking in that world and helping my creative stuff move forward in some small way, even if it was very small. So I could sort of justify it that way. Staying home full time and freelancing, it's tough because you got to spend a lot of time hunting down work, and you can't say no to it, especially if you need the money. You just got to constantly scramble for work. And while you're scrambling for work, it's difficult to actually work on the things you want to work on. So, I've been working on the Pineys and Wokistan, and we're working on a sequel to Wokistan. And it's very difficult to do that if you're also working, on client work. Because I've got a client right now, and he's not super demanding or anything, but he takes precedent because I need that money. And it's good, and it's decent money. So, I want that money. I got to put my client first, and then I got to set everything else aside. So, it ends up being that a lot of my personal projects get shunted to the side and delayed. And, even though my bank account might go up a little bit, everything else time-wise gets pushed back. So, don't always be so gung-ho to just jump right into full-time freelancing because, you're essentially working for yourself. You're working into, a full-time business. Now, that's not to say that if you get a real screenwriting gig and, really land like a 100K job, I mean, hey, you could be set at least for a little while. But, there are downsides to that too. Screenwriters don't work very often. It's very tough to work steadily as a screenwriter. I don't work steadily as a screenwriter per se. I work steadily as a writer, but I have to write a bunch of different things. Screenwriting is like hit or miss, and a lot of times your clients, it's their one project and they want to spend lots of time talking about it and having meeting after meeting after meeting. You can't really afford that. You got to knock things out in a couple of months at most, and then, get that money and move on to the next thing because you have bills to pay. They want to spend, 6 months to a year. I've had clients, they didn't turn into clients, but they were like potential clients, let's say, filmmakers who, no lie, they wanted to spend a year writing a screenplay, which, I was down with if they were going to pay me a year's salary, but they didn't have that kind of money. And they would get, indignant, like, well, I can't pay you that kind of money. I can't pay you a year's salary. Well, you want me around for a year to take your calls at 3 o'clock in the morning and spend hours discussing a scene. That's work in the creative realm. And if you're doing that work for free, then you miss out because there's other work you could be doing for money. You can get behind on your bills, and that's a bad thing. Now, if you're doing that on the side, yes, I can spend a few hours, let's say, talking to you about whatever, but then also, if I'm working a day job, I got to get up for work the next day, so I can't stay up to 3 o'clock in the morning. So, there's a balance in there. And so don't be so anxious that, like, if you quit your job, all your problems will be solved, in terms of your time. There's also a pressure, too, when you have all that time. It's great, don't get me wrong. But, there is... the flexibility of it's really good. You can run your errands in the middle of the day. You can sleep whenever you want. If you need to take a day off, it's not a problem. The downside is always the money. It's always the money. You have to constantly have things in the queue to keep the money train rolling so you can pay your bills. And if you don't have that, it can end and then leave you in a really bad position, or you could be burning through savings. And so you got to be very disciplined. And you got to be pretty lucky because even if you discipline yourself, and let's say you've got 10 grand in the bank, as a buffer, and the work dries up, you got to make a decision real quick. How long's that 10 grand going to last you? How many months before you got to bite the bullet and go get a day job just to survive? It's a tough call. So, screenwriters, I guess my advice would be don't quit your day job. Keep something. Keep some, at the very least, keep like a part-time gig so you're not totally broke. Even if it's just something like 2 or 3 days a week, so you can get at least, the ideal situation probably would be something like 2 or 3 days a week, and that covers your basic bills. If you could do something like that, that's ideal. And then you got 3 or 4 days, the rest of the week, and you could spend, you can make time more for a weekend when you have that kind of time. But in the world of freelancing, it's all about time management. It's all about feast or famine. So good luck, screenwriters. I know it's tough, but at the end of the day, if you love it, you're going to stick to it. Good luck.